Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Just going to wait until everyone gets in from the waiting room. Feel free to turn your video on, or you can leave it off if you prefer. We're so happy that you were able to join us today to learn more about Virtual Language Advocacy Days 2022. We want to make sure that you have all of the information so you're ready to register and join us in our advocacy. There's so much to learn, so much to get to do, and it's really quite a unique experience. So I'm going to just wait 1 second as everyone makes sure that they're in, and we will get started. Okay, I think that everyone is in. So thank you so much for coming today. Welcome to the JNCL-NCLIS Virtual Language Advocacy Days info session. We are excited that this year will be virtual again. We had such a wonderful experience this past year where we were able to meet with all of the senators' offices, all 100 senators' offices, we've represented all 50 states. And we also met with over 200 offices in the House as well. Just a wonderful experience, and we want to teach you a little bit about what Language Advocacy Days is all about, why it's important. And I want to back up a little bit and start by telling you a little bit about JNCL-NCLIS. JNCL-NCLIS is the Joint National Committee for Languages, the National Council for Languages and International Studies. And we are an organization that is comprised of a coalition of organizations and companies from across the nation, all focused on language education and focused on promoting and pursuing growth in language education opportunities so that every student has the opportunity to learn English and at least one other language. This is the focus of our mission. We are looking for equitable, more diverse and broad opportunities for all learners to learn languages and become proficient. We know that this is essential in order for us to do our work in so many different walks of life, which is why you see all of the different areas of language that we represent here on this slide. We've been in existence for 40 years, and this year is actually our 40th anniversary. And though I could talk all day about what a difference JNCL-NCLIS has made in my life, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that later, really what I'd like to share with you first, as president of JNCL-NCLIS, I'm honored to share with you this video that we made this year about our 40th anniversary that will tell you everything you need to know about JNCL.
In 1978, in order to address our nation's lack of language proficient Americans, President Jimmy Carter convened the Commission on Foreign Language and International Studies. The Commission's charge was to review the existing legislation, assess national need, and recommend, quote, means for directing public attention to the importance of foreign language and international studies for the improvement of communications and understanding with other nations in an increasingly interdependent world. It was the vision and clear national concern expressed by members of the Commission, in particular, then Congressman Paul Simon and Congressman Leon Panetta, that led to the Commission's report defining the need for a leading body to continue to advocate for and support the growth of language learning with results for all Americans. One of the Commission's major recommendations was the creation of a Washington presence. In 1981, that presence began to be established, and the idea of the Joint National Committee for Languages and its sister association, the National Council for Languages and International Studies, was born as an educational association originally comprised of 8 members, giving life to this national need for grassroots educational advocacy and lobbying for language, and setting the stage for the development of this great collaborative organization.
Dean Elatis, as he's known due to his long tenure as Dean of Georgetown's School of Languages and Linguistics, was instrumental in founding JNCL-NCLIS. I am Dr. Nicole Cooper, and I'm an Associate Clinical Professor of Management at the University of Maryland. I interviewed Dean Elatis as part of my dissertation, which was an oral history of his life. Some have called Dean Elatis the Great One. Others called him Dean East, since he was a huge force in foreign language education and policy on the East Coast. However, despite these monikers, I found Dean Elatis to actually be quite humble. It was difficult throughout our numerous interviews to get him to really take credit for these accomplishments that he'd done, running TESOL, passing the NDAA, founding JNCL. And one of his strengths was really in identifying talent. Whether it was Dr. Deborah Tannen at Georgetown's School of Languages and Linguistics or Dr. J. David Edwards at JNCL, he had a nose for finding great people. Speaking about JNCL, Dean Elatus said, "This had a funny beginning. The Presidential Commission on Foreign Languages and International Studies was headed by then President of Cornell University. It was the Perkins Commission. It came out and I saw what was happening. I'd been in the government and I saw what happened to those reports. And at a meeting for the Joint National Committee of Languages in Tucson, I said, look, you guys, what's going to happen to this? It's going to die. We ought to have our own lobby group." And so, to thank me for my suggestion, they made me chairman of the committee to find somebody. And we found a couple of people, but then I found that gem in the backyard named Dave Edwards.
Since 1981, JNCL-NCLIS has continued to grow as a coalition that encompasses all aspects of language learning in the United States, all levels of education, language services, and language learning companies. The strength of the common consistent voice used by JNCL-NCLIS and its many advocates has moved lawmakers and administrative leaders over the decades to make language a priority in legislative action. Through the years, JNCL-NCLIS has found great political champions and their unforgettable staff members whose actions have yielded great strides to support equitable language learning opportunities and language preservation and revitalization programs. Beyond the borders of Washington, D.C., JNCL continues to be a strong partner for our advocates out in the states and municipalities, working to sustain and grow language learning, save programs in danger of being cut, support equitable teacher development, impact policies and practices for language services, and focus on global connections across education and business. In 2015, as a result of the collaboration of the Lead with Languages national campaign, led by ACTFL, and the nonstop work of JNCL-NCLIS advocates gaining lawmaker support, Congress commissioned a study by the American Academy of Arts and Sciences that renews and enhances the charge set forth by the Carter Commission in 1978. The AAAS Commission report entitled America's Languages, Investing in Language Education for the 21st Century calls on us to improve access to as many languages as possible for people of every age, ethnicity, and socioeconomic background. The recommendations of this landmark study, to which so many JNCL-NCLIS members and other leaders around the fields of language volunteered their time and support, is the foundation that guides JNCL-NCLIS advocacy and strengthens our coalition. JNCL-NCLIS celebrates this milestone of collective accomplishments and the continued success and growth of collaboration across all language fields. The work of JNCL-NCLIS does not stop here. This year of presidential transition is yet another great step toward achieving the mission and vision of the organization, a world where language facilitates the free movement of people, information, and ideas, builds mutual understanding and acceptance of cultural and linguistic diversity, and promotes the personal development of the individual. Raise your voice, share your story, and join JNCL-NCLIS for this next chapter of language advocacy.
I hope you all enjoyed the video. I hope you got a real feel for what JNCL-NCLIS represents and the history of our organization, which is long and really has so many wonderful people associated with it. If you were able to see in the beginning, JNCL-NCLIS began under under a Carter Commission, specifically with Leon Panetta and Paul Simon at the time. We even had Secretary Panetta speak at our event this past year, and it was such an honor to have him there since he's been involved since the inception of JNCL 40 years ago. But the work that we do every single day is to make sure that language is a part of the conversation at all of the legislative tables, federally, and to make sure that in the states, language is represented properly and provided with the resources and the tools, human and otherwise, to make sure that educationally all students have this opportunity. We know how important this is. We know from talking to each other in our field how essential it is and how strongly we feel about it. But now it's incumbent upon us every year to go back and teach everyone on Capitol Hill why it's important. And there are so many different reasons. And so today I want to just tell you a little bit more about Language Advocacy Day and what we provide for you at JNCL-NCLIS to allow you to participate in LAD. LAD is really what kickstarts our year each year. It's our legislative springboard. We get there and we have specific ideas and asks, the ideas that we are going to be asking of our requests we're making of our legislators. We basically come together and we develop your stories around these asks with your teammates from your state. And then you have an opportunity to unite with all of the people from your state, as well as everyone nationally, in this very exciting and energetic way, where you then get to meet with your legislators and take back what you've learned. But part of that is also the establishment of these relationships. The relationships that you establish by getting to know the people in your legislators' offices is what makes the difference. And I just have to say that from my own perspective, I've been doing this for about 15 years now. And I can just tell you that from day one, 15 years ago, when I had the opportunity to work with Dave Edwards and to get here, I was so excited by the chance to just speak my story of language and being multilingual, and coming into this having had a national security education program scholarship when I was in college, and how that changed things for me. Getting the chance to go in and talk about these things and relate them to the pending legislation and the possibilities for policy was really what made a huge difference for me. And it's inspired me to want to keep doing that. So, when you come to Language Advocacy Day, we prepare you. We don't want you to come here and think I've got to figure out how I'm going to do this. We want you to know that we will take you along every step of the way and provide everything that you need so that you have the tools and the space to do this. So, Alyssa, you want to go to the next slide? Perfect. So this is our schedule. This is kind of a broad overview of our schedule for the 3 days. And in talking about the schedule, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the event. We schedule Language Advocacy Days for 3 days. However, your meetings with your members of Congress are only on one of those. So I'll explain how this works. Wednesday is our day of preparation. It's the day that we all get together. We get to see who's there. We get to have an opportunity to get some insights from people on Capitol Hill. We always have staffers from the different congressional offices. This year, we're hoping to have all multilingual staffers there, and to give us some perspective on what are the best things that we can say in the offices when we go in. What are the things that they're looking to hear? What are the tools that they want to hear, that they want to receive from us? Now, understand that coming into this, you will already have received all of the materials and all of the information so that you can read up on it ahead of time. But when you get there, we're going to walk you through everything, through your legislative asks, which are usually about 3, that really help you understand what it is that we're asking for and why, give you the background, and then, of course, you have the chance to make your own personal and professional connections to it. You'll have the chance to get this virtual advocacy experience together. You're going to learn how it works on Zoom. You'll be working with your other teammates from your state, and getting to know those colleagues while you plan out how you're going to approach your meetings. Your meetings will have been planned for you, and you will have a schedule with all of your meetings already on it. And then, of course, you'll have this chance to do that team planning. We're going to introduce you to all of how this works. And in addition to that, Wednesday is so exciting because we always have wonderful, inspirational speakers who help us kick off our event as well. This past year, as I said, we had Leon Panetta, and this year will be no exception. We will have some very exciting speakers to announce very soon. And then, of course, Wednesday evening, we take a little bit of time to have a networking reception. We know that it's different in a virtual environment. We can't all walk around and shake hands the way that we used to and have an opportunity to have conversations in that way. So we've recreated that networking environment online. We'll give you the chance to get to know each other, to make connections, and to walk away with a whole bunch of new connections that will help you further your goals as well. Now, on Thursday morning is when everything starts with our congressional meetings. You will have had the schedule for what your meetings are ahead of time. Your meetings will take you with your entire team to the different senators' offices online and to the different members of the House online. This will all be done virtually, and it will all be on the Zoom platform through our great program advocacy associates who will be working with us this year. They are providing us with such an incredible tool online that will have everything in one spot for you. It will be visually very easy to manage. You won't have to worry about having multiple things open, and they will make it so simple for you. And we'll be explaining that to you on Wednesday prior to the event on Thursday, you will be meeting with everyone, and then that evening we have our reception and award ceremony. and a special event as well. You will have the opportunity to hear from those in our field who've been doing such great work that we're providing them with a special award. And, then Friday is when we do this overview of results. Like, what have we heard? States make their own videos, and you'll get to see some of those online in the next couple of weeks. They make videos with all of their team members, kind of telling us what they heard, what they saw, and what the connections were that they made, how we can follow up on it. And then we have these wonderful language at the intersection breakout sessions. And I want to explain this language at the intersection piece. This year's theme is very exciting to me, because one of the things that I've been saying for a long time is that we must find ways to not just preach to our choir, right? We have to be turning outward and talking about language and where it intersects with all the different aspects of our lives. So this year, our theme is language at the intersection. And think about that. Language at the intersection of healthcare, of social justice, of education, obviously, of identity, of community. There are so many, of business. There are so many different ways that language intersects with what we do every day. And that's what we will be highlighting across our entire event, and especially on Friday, when we have an opportunity to get to hear from different people in these different fields and how language impacts their everyday experiences. I believe that for those of you who are educators, will help you go back and help others and your students understand why it's so important. And for those of you who are coming from other areas of language, this is also an opportunity to make those connections, to help understand where the connections can be made so that we can support language education and ongoing growth in language education in all different ways and at different levels. Because of course, the federal level is one piece of it. Then we have to bring it home. And of course, the next piece is advocating beyond LAD. So we have a group of people who will get together, and you'll have meetings discussing how you take what you've learned and what you've experienced and turn around and bring it home. What does that look like in a local situation, in a school board situation, or in a PTA situation? What does it look like in your school, in your district, in your region, certainly in your state? And then how we can work together to make sure that you have the tools to go back with to continue your advocacy. As I said, language at the intersection is our theme because we know, we are positive that is what we must help everyone understand in order to see that language carries through all different parts of what we're doing, that it's not a separate or a special as we've been relegated to be in so many educational environments. So that is really our schedule for the event, and I will be taking questions in just a few moments, but I'm just going to go to the next slide. If we can go, Alyssa, to the next slide. There we go. So I want to get some insight from the people who've done this with me for several years now. And so today I'm thrilled to have Giovanni Donatelli, our JNCL treasurer and board member, and also CEO of the language group, and Linda Ignatz, who I believe is here on the phone, who is our JNCL president-elect, also representing the Central States organization. And we are here to talk a little bit about what the experience is, first as a first-time advocate. And let's talk a little bit about that, Gio. You just several years ago was your first experience, so maybe you could talk a little bit about your first-time advocate experience and how that helped when we did the mentoring.
Absolutely. Thank you, Amanda, for giving me the opportunity to share some experience and insight. I believe coming up 2021 is my 5th or 6th, 2022 is my 5th or 6th event attending. The first time I attended, being that I am personally based in Virginia and this event takes place on Capitol Hill in DC, Virginia tends to have the largest advocates or attendees, simply because it's proximity. We can all drive there. As such, I was fortunate to have several mentors to follow. And that's very important because I'm attending on behalf of language education. I wanted to make sure that being in the T&I industry, the translation and interpreting industry, we rely heavily on graduates of world language programs to eventually enter the T&I industry and slowly cultivate their professions in that regard. So I felt it was my part as a professional in the T&I industry to help ensure that there is funding available for language education going forward. It's just part of giving back, and I feel like it's important to be a part of this process. But didn't know where to start, what to do. So attending LAD was the first step. Once I did that once or twice, the third year, I'm the speaker for the state of Virginia on behalf of LAD, simply because some of my mentors weren't available at that particular time in on those events, and there were new attendees, and I felt it was my job to set an example. So LAD is structured in such a way that you're giving a script. We have specific asks, and I personally, in my tenure, I've watched LAD lobby for a bill, or one of our asks was for a bill to be passed. Within 12 months, that bill was passed, and the very next year, we were asking for appropriations to address funding for that specific bill, which was succeeded, and now we're going back to make sure the funding continues for the specific program. So I've witnessed this sausage being made, and it was pretty efficient. Mind you, we have some very effective professionals behind the scenes that make this happen on behalf of JNCL. It's not just a bunch of language educators and translation industry people coming together. We have some professional guidance that understand how lawmaking works. And I was happy to be a representative of this industry of language education and present it. But it was attending, copying what's happening, having proper guidance, and then having the fortitude to spend a day on your feet walking across the entire Capitol Hill campus. It is quite a full day when you're there in person.
Certainly is.
And you're so, one of the biggest takeaways I can say about this event is the immense amount of accomplishment every single attendee has at the end of Thursday. You spent the entire day talking to your state representative. Well, first you're talking to your senators. Okay, so you're going to your Senate's office. But then as the day, usually Senate meetings are in the mornings, at least we try to organize it that way. And then in the afternoons, you're doing your local representatives. And if you're able, your entire state hits every representative together if the schedule allows. Otherwise, you split up and it may be just one or two of you from your district meeting your representative. Well, you may not have been the representative of your group in the beginning in the morning, but that afternoon meeting with your local rep, you may have to be the representative of JNCL. And this gives you a chance to create that relationship with that staffer and that office. And also you may end up visiting their offices back in your home district as well and continue that conversation. And last thing I want to point out is, since my participation with LAD events, I've also participated in events at the state level of Virginia. For example, we've had issues we've been addressing for the past couple of years about the coding bill replacing language education and how important it is to keep language education as a freestanding requirement and not have it be replaced by computer programming languages. So these are things that hit home right in our home states, and I'm more armed with by attending LAD to address these issues back at home. So that's kind of all of it in a nutshell, but I hope that's
no, it's wonderful, Gio, and getting your perspective on this from the translation and interpretation industry is so important as well. And the way that that's now crossed over, where you're working so closely with educators, and when you were able to even testify in the Virginia issues with coding, which was so important as well. And I would just ask you, for me, having been involved with LAD for so many years and with JNCL for so many years, one of the things that stands out for me from my perspective was, getting the chance to get to meet people, maintain that relationship with the staffer, and work towards getting them to convince their member of Congress to take a next step. And I just, to quickly share a little bit about my experience, was, when I first came to this, Frank Lautenberg was still in office in New Jersey, and Rush Holt was in office. Now, Frank Lautenberg was our senator from New Jersey. Rush Holt was a congressman. Both of those offices became so important in the national landscape for language education. You just never know. When you go in and you make a request, if a senator puts forth a bill that is going to support FLAP grants, or is going to support the Fulbright program, or any of the other, or WILARA, or any of the other issues, which now is supported by my Senator Cory Booker, when that happens, it changes everything. The dynamics of what you've done, being a constituent from that person's district or that person's state, now have a ripple effect on the entire nation. with regard to language education. And I think that is so important. And so, Gio, I would just ask you, how did virtual LAD last year for the first time, how did it exceed your expectations, or how did it surprise you?
First of all, I'm sure I don't speak only for myself, but for the past year and a half, 20 months, many of us have had to attend virtual events. Okay, some are well run, some you felt like it wasn't as rewarding as it could have been for the time you invested. I have to say, I believe the virtual was actually more effective with regards to tangible results on behalf of JNCL than the in-person events. Now, there's obviously there's pros and cons in both. So let me first talk about the pros. Every single staffer meeting was on time, and it was attended by more attendees from the delegate's office. We had more people attending those virtual meetings because they're attending from their home offices. They just look at their schedule, that's the next meeting on their calendar, they click on it and they're all there. So we actually have more attentive eyes and less distractions. If we're in a physical office at a congressional, at the Capitol building, we may have to meet in the hallway because the conference room is taken for that specific time.
Or a closet, that's happened to me too.
Yes, I mean, it's behind a construction, barrier, because that's where it's the quietest you can have a meeting. It's chaos on the Hill, but it's also invigorating. So I felt like we had more attention. We also had a higher probability of actually meeting the policymaker themselves directly. I think last year I had 5 total meetings, 2 senator meetings and 3 congressional meetings. And 2 of the 3 congressional meetings were attended by the congressperson themselves directly. It was wonderful
because
experience.
It's so easy for them to log in from wherever they are.
Exactly. So I feel like we had, and of course, because it's virtual, we had more attendees, and having more numbers, more people on the screen creates a greater sense of importance, and it's a stronger call to action when you have so many people on the screen having a specific legislative ask. So I feel like the pros were we had better numbers to represent our cause. We had better attendance and better attention from the policymaker's office. That's the pros. The cons is obviously the human element that we all miss from being in person. The receptions, the walking in through the rain across Capitol Hill, trying to get cabs to go around to make your meeting on time, or running because your schedule is so tight. That's something we've been doing for 40 years or 38 years. We on the leadership of JNCL are also trying to figure out what it will look like when we go back to in-person meetings. Will it be a hybrid event? Because there are pros to both perspectives. Yeah. But I have to say, I was astounded at the engagement level of the attendees, both from the attendee delegate side and from the policymaker side. Right. And the results, and we were all engaged. It was still a very energetic environment. So the virtual was great. So.
Well, thank you. And, and I would also say that, one of the greatest things about virtual is that we were able to get some incredible speakers who we might not have been able to see, in person in the ways that we were. And we were able to have some visual experiences with everyone that with our speakers who spoke in the evenings, and we were able to visit the Planet Word Museum virtually, all of us. And there were so many great things that we were able to do online. It opened different doors for us. And it was the very first time that we've had all 50 states represented. And I think there's something very powerful about bringing everyone together and letting everyone know that we're all there with the common voice. And, when we think about our most memorable congressional meetings, there are so many that come to mind for me. But what I kind of want to talk about is the experience of how taking the tools that we learn about advocacy, and knowing the great Dave Edwards taught me about how important it is to make sure that what you do and what you say is purposeful when you meet with people, to do your research and know who it is you're meeting with. It doesn't even need to be just a member of Congress, but who is the person in that office that you're meeting with. In so many cases, I can tell you that we have advocates who have come back and said that the person they met with was a former student of theirs, or was someone who went to their school, or somehow they had a connection. In one meeting, the woman that was on our team was working with this student's, this staffer's father at her university. And there were so many different things that were going on. But what I remember is taking this idea of researching the person beforehand. And I took that back to my state, and several years ago, when we were trying to get the seal of biliteracy passed in New Jersey, I had a meeting with Governor Christie's attorneys in order to get them to pass it. And I walked in and I had this NYU folder, because I had gone to NYU and I happened to have that with me. And I had done some research on the guy who was there next, who was the attorney, and he had gone to NYU too. I thought I'll just keep that in my back pocket as something I can talk about. That's really kind of what you try to do there, is you try to make sure you know what you can talk about. Well, I sat down at the table and he sat down next to me and he had the exact same folder. Nothing I could have ever planned, nothing I could have ever known about. But then when he did, we had this whole point of discussion about study abroad, about language at NYU, and all of these connections. And all I can tell you is you never know what is going to be the thing that pushes a bill or a person to take that next step and put things in front of their member of Congress or in front of the governor. And in that case, in the state of New Jersey, a few weeks later, Governor Christie signed the seal of biliteracy into law the same day he vetoed mandatory recess for young children. You have no idea what was in the making of that. But what I can tell you is that making connections with people, getting to know the people that you meet in each office will make that happen. And just one other thing, we have a wonderful connection with Mike Reed, who I knew in 3 different congressional offices over the last several years. And now, as you know, he's working for the Speaker of the House. And in that position, we are still able to communicate with him and have opportunities to have him involved in the things that we know he knows to care about, because we've taught him over the years about the things that are important in language. Together, this experience is like no other. There are a million conferences you can go to in a year. There are a million educational experiences, professional experiences, but Gio, I wonder if you feel the same way. There's nothing like JNCL's LAD that brings us together in a different way, in a broader but very focused way.
I do want to kind of address one issue to make sure everyone understands. Even though I'm here presenting on behalf of LAD, as I've mentioned, I work in the translation interpreting industry. So when I first entered, JNCL as a member and a supporter and of course a delegate, I'm surrounded by language educators. First of all, I have fond memories of my language classes growing up. I am a heritage speaker myself, so immigrant raised in an Italian household. So I speak Italian, and I took Latin through high school and Italian in college, university. But those were my fondest memories. So all of a sudden, I'm surrounded by a bunch of educators. I felt a little bit out of place because I haven't worked in the education industry. I've worked in the translation interpreting industry. However, I felt that I did belong there, and it was just such a warm environment. So I felt welcomed. Now I'm lucky enough to be serving in leadership and help do my part. But I want everyone to know that every first-time attendee felt the same way. They felt welcome. They felt we all have the same problems in our respective industries, and we're able to, I like to say, when I go home, my family does not want to hear what I dealt with all day long because it's work. But if I go to a conference with like-minded people, we can all complain about our jobs because everyone understands. And it's this wonderful feeling of catharsis, basically. And LAD gives you that opportunity, not only to represent your profession on the Hill and help make real, tangible change, but also help give you those networking moments where you can have catharsis and vent about what's going on, and everyone understands because they're in the same position you are. So it's a wonderful experience psychologically and obviously professionally. So
thank you so much, Gio. Thank you for sharing all of your perspectives today. I really appreciate it. And of course, for your leadership at JNCL. Thank you so much for your leadership. And so I just want to take a moment to kind of go over this again. So for JNCL, what we want to do is we want to kickstart advocacy each year on language education. And LAD does that. We provide you with the tools, with all of the information that you need and the experience. We set it all up for you so that you can come and have this experience as a first-time attendee and not have to worry. You will have mentors in your groups. You will have all different people, and then you walk away with these tools that can then be applied to different scenarios locally and in your state, as well as these connections and these networks of people who will continue to support you. And of course, JNCL-NCLIS will continue to support you in all of the issues that you see coming up with regard to language locally and in your state as well. And so I want to invite you all, of course, to share your questions right now, but also to join us for LAD and to reach out if you have any other questions about it, and also to reach out to your colleagues. There is strength in numbers. I can tell you that advocacy is not a one-shot deal. It's not something that happens, you do it once and you walk away. Advocacy is something that requires consistent, loud voices. Consistent voices saying the same thing together again and again. And that's why having us all together at LAD is so important. And I hope to see you all there. Do we have any questions, Alyssa? Do we have any questions from anyone here? Okay, I'll wait I'll do my teacher waiting time and see if anyone has any questions. But I have to tell you that as we approach this day, we are really coming to a head with all of the exciting things that are going to happen. Now, understand, everything that happens at LAD is driven by what's going on congressionally. So you can imagine that that's something that evolves even up to like the last minute. But that's the excitement of it as well. Not knowing exactly what is going to be in place beforehand congressionally is part of our planning. We take that, you don't have to worry about that. We take care of all of that. We make sure you have all of the tools that you need. And if anyone has a question specifically about, about how this works, I'm glad to answer. Emily has a great question. How will we find out from our states who will be attending prior to LAD? Well, I'm glad that you asked that. What we try to do is, once we have the lists of all of our registrants, we will send out information to the different state teams. The different state teams will receive that, and you will see all of the names of your team members. And of course, that'll be a part of the platform this year as well. Our new platform is going to be wonderful through Advocacy Associates. We'll provide you with all of that information so that you can get in touch with them ahead of time. But I also want to encourage you, if you have colleagues who have not registered or who are not here today, please let them know about it. The more people we can get to do this, the better, and the better our results will be. Anybody else have a question? Thank you for your question, Emily. I greatly appreciate it. The sooner that everyone registers, the better, because that gives us more of a chance to get the teams put together, to make sure that every state is represented. And I just want to say that to everyone here, having every state represent a big difference in what we're able to achieve. So please make sure that you reach out not only to colleagues near you, but those in other states, and make sure that they're coming as well. And we will make sure that we get information out to you as things evolve for our event. What we ask you to do is register as soon as possible so that we have opportunities for everyone to make sure that we have you connected to the right people in the right places. And of course, if you're looking for a mentor or you're looking for someone who's attended before, Ju and I can make sure that you connect with someone ahead of time as well. Couple of other questions. What are the typical role groups attending the event? So the typical role groups, I think what you mean is that the groups are by state. The groups are done by state, so that the role that you have is to represent the issues, of course, and the things that are going on in your state, but also to be presenting those specific asks. So the people who will be in your group, oh, I see. So the people who will be in your group are primarily teachers, you'll have professors, and you will have supervisors. You will also have members of the business community, all different. And that's the beauty of this, is that it'll usually be a really big, broad group, but often educators as well. And then also, you're very welcome, Emily. And then one other question I see, how far ahead will we receive all the needed information? So a few weeks prior, you'll definitely be seeing things rolling out, but certainly the asks will be there a few weeks prior, so that way you can start to look at them. The only thing that will be, if anything is adjusted, we'll be sharing that with you. And we will be having a webinar for registrants with even more information and a walkthrough of the asks closer to the event, so that not only will we send the information ahead of the event by a couple of weeks, we'll also have a webinar explaining it ahead of time, so you can be really ready to go. What we would ask you to do, and one of the things that I suggest, for years when I represented New Jersey, one of the things that I did was I created a kind of like a little piece of news, like a one-pager that I would bring about my state, giving all of the background. I was the president of my language association at that time. And so I was able to give kind of one-page explanation of what was going on with regard to language in the state of New Jersey. And I was able to share that with our legislators at the same time as we shared the federal asks that we had. That made a huge difference. And now many states do that same thing. And you can see examples of that. We'll be able to share that on our website so you can see that as well. Any other questions? Okay, I will give everyone one more second. I want to just take this moment. Alyssa, do we have any other slide here that we need to pull up, or are we all set? I think we're there. But I want to just also mention one other thing that in the last several years, we've had teachers bring their students. We've had professors bring their students. We've had teachers bring their students. And this year, again, because it's virtual, you can do more of that. It is so valuable. We have a student rate, and we have this opportunity for you to bring students and expose them and give them this experience of actually learning how to advocate. And I have to tell you that my first language advocacy started in college, and I encourage you to consider getting your students involved right away. It's really a very unique experience for them. So don't be afraid to consider that. And if you have more questions about that, feel free to reach out. Okay, let me see. I think there's another question here. Let me just see really quickly. Do you have a pathway to include students, high school, or freelance language access in the Congress? Yeah, so everything is, so the cost that we've tried to make really reasonable, and everything is individual individual registration for the event, even though our membership of our organization is based on organizational membership. Our attendees are individual registrants for this event. So we certainly encourage you to reach out to your member organizations. Often member organizations will sponsor people to attend. So I encourage you to do that as well, to look at costs. But in this case, really, it's just the registration fee, because there's no travel involved, which is one of the beautiful things about the virtual event.
If I could just
Sure.
add to what you just made a comment regarding freelancers from language access community into the conference. There are freelance linguists that have attended in the past, and it's great to see them as well. And as Amanda mentioned, if you're a member of a trade organization like the American Translators Association, who are members of JNCL, you can see if you're a member of theirs, they could possibly cover or help defray some of the costs of attending. So if you're a member of a trade association, if they are members, then maybe that can work for you as well. But again, we try to keep the cost low because it is a virtual event. So yes. It should be more palatable for you to attend, even at the present price point. But there are ways of working around that as well. So.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Gio. That's a great suggestion. So I want to offer you all the opportunity to register at our priority rate, which is already closed, but it's open for you today. And you can use this discount code. It says info session 22. And in the next 24 hours, you can go ahead and secure a discounted registration at languagepolicy.org. We hope that you'll join us. Really, it's an opportunity to just get the chance to advocate and do things differently. To really, a lot of your advocacy happens every day in every walk of life that you're on using language. But here you have a chance to explain it to people who otherwise wouldn't be focusing on it. And that's why we need you and we need your voice. So I hope you will all register. I hope you will all join us for that time. And certainly if you have any questions at all, feel free to email us at info@languagepolicy.org, and you'll hear from either Alyssa Rutkowski or myself. And we thank you so much for joining us today. If you have any additional questions, please reach out, and have a wonderful afternoon. Don't forget to take down that discount code and go straight to languagepolicy.org and register. Hope to see you all there. Thank you again.